They assigned a human to milk alien women, then discovered why no one else could. The shuttle's thrusters hummed into silence as it docked against the outer hull of Lactaris Station, a massive gleaming ring suspended in the black void between. The twin sons of the Bosthus system. Brad Davis stood from his jump seat, adjusting the strap of his heavy technician's toolkit slung over his shoulder. Even through the tinted viewport, he could see the flickering golden-blue corona of the twin stars casting long, dramatic shadows across the station's ridged plating. He exhaled, squaring his broad shoulders as the docking bay hatch hissed open. He wasn't sure what he expected when he signed on with intergalactic equipment services, maybe some repair gigs on minor freighters, an asteroid processing station. Here or there. Certainly not this, not Lactaris. And not what he'd been told only yesterday, that the station was home to the Sorban species, a race of humanoid alien women known for one very specific biological trait. Their species lactated. Constantly. Not in cycles. Not due to pregnancy. Constantly. Brad stepped onto the polished metal floor of the arrival bay, his boots clanking softly. A light scent hung in the air, floral, creamy, strangely calming. The air filtration system pulsed with quiet, pristine efficiency. He barely had time to take in the bizarre vertical gardens on the walls when she appeared. Her skin shimmered lavender beneath the overhead lights, smooth as porcelain with a subtle opalescent sheen. She wore a skin-tight white uniform that seemed designed to accentuate every curve of her hourglass frame. Her eyes, large and bright, sparkled with a violet hue that seemed almost lit from within. She smiled as she approached, and her voice was melodic, lightly accented, and somehow musical. "Welcome to Lactaris Station, human. You must be technician Brad Davis." Brad cleared his throat, doing his best not to let his eyes drift to where her uniform strained across her chest. "That's me, here to fix whatever's broken." "Oh, we're all very excited to have you here," Tiala purred, her tone dipped in double meaning. "Your hands come highly recommended," he blinked. I'm a specialist in biomechanical fluid systems, particularly calibration and regulator alignment on complex extractors." "Oh, I'm sure," she said, stepping close enough that he caught the warm scent of her skin, vanilla, and something richer, almost like cream. "Come, your quarters await. Then we'll brief you on the milking protocols." He followed her through a series of corridors, his boots tapping beside her barefooted, graceful steps. The walls were sleek, chromatic, pulsing with energy conduits that glowed faintly. Along the way, he noticed more Sorban women, each distinct in skin tone and shape, but all sharing one thing in common: radiant confidence, ample physiques, and minimal uniforms. The station was populated entirely by women. Every face that turned his way offered a knowing smile or curious glance. Brad shifted his grip on the toolkit, jaw tightening. This wasn't what he signed up for. Or was it? Tiala gestured to a broad viewport as they passed. Below, enormous harvest chambers bloomed like glass flowers, dozens of rooms housing sleek chrome chairs, articulated milking units, and streams of softly glowing fluid flowing through sterile pipelines. Automated arms moved with gentle precision, adjusting suction valves and temperature gauges. "You weren't told everything." "I suspect," Tiala said, watching his reaction. "This isn't just a milk harvesting station, Brad. Lactaris is the center of a billion-credit industry. Sorban milk is used in everything from luxury nutrition supplements to deep space rejuvenation serums. What flows from this station touches every major market in the galaxy." Brad stared through the glass, stunned. "So, this is politics." "This is power," Tiala corrected, her tone suddenly serious. "And from today forward, you're a part of it. The machines are breaking. Down more than we'd like to admit." The girls are growing restless. We need someone who knows what he's doing." He turned to look at her. For the first time, he noticed the steel beneath the smile. This wasn't just a flirtatious alien trying to toy with a new human. This was a representative of an empire, built on biology, and he was the one being asked to keep it running. Brad nodded slowly, the weight of his assignment beginning to settle in. "And I'd better not screw it up." Tiala smiled again, warmer this time. "Good, because on Lacturus, everyone's watching." Brad woke to the soft chime of a proximity alert Lacturus station's way of gently encouraging you to start the day. He sat up in the curved alcove of his quarters, sleek and sterile like most things on the station, but bathed in warm light that pulsed in rhythm with the station's artificial day-night cycle. For a place filled with such biological intensity, it sure tried to look like a luxury cruise ship. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the events of yesterday still swirling in his mind. He had a job to do, but what kind of job, exactly, was still unclear. His orders said, equipment diagnostics and repair, but no one had mentioned the sheer biological intimacy the role would imply. This wasn't like tuning coolant flow regulators or welding grav stabilizers in vacuum gear. This job meant interfacing with living bodies, touching them, calibrating around them, adjusting machines while they ... He pushed the thought aside, stood, and zipped up his jumpsuit. When he arrived at the primary bioextraction wing, the air smelled different. Not unpleasant, just warm, organic. The central corridor curved gently around a massive transparent core where streams of softly glowing milk pulsed through arched conduits like glowing rivers. On either side, rows of extraction rooms hummed with faint suction rhythms. Tiala met him just outside the access control gate, her posture relaxed but eyes sharp. Today, she wore a pale blue sash across her chest and a translucent shoulder wrap less provocative than before, but somehow even more dignified. "You slept well, I hope?" she asked, as well as I could with the sound of vacuum pumps hissing. "Outside my window," Brad muttered, adjusting the strap of his toolkit. Tiala smiled. "You'll get used to it. Come, Naira's waiting." They passed through 2 checkpoints, and Brad's ID was scanned twice before they were allowed into a control room overlooking a circular chamber below. Inside, resting comfortably in one of the reclining milking chairs, was a Sorban woman with deep red hair, coiled in elegant loops and skin the color of moonlight. Ny era. She sat in profile, her gaze flicking toward the window above, as if she sensed them watching. Her expression was unreadable, but her posture was regal even, with twin milking cups attached gently to her full breasts, pulsing in slow, rhythmic patterns. Tubes carried her milk into glowing reservoirs beside her. "She's our highest producer," Tiala said, voice low, "but her machine's calibration is off. The suction's not syncing with her natural let-down rhythm. It's making her uncomfortable, and it's reducing yield. She's not happy." Brad's throat tightened. "You want me to fix it?" While she single quotes S... being milked. "She insisted on it," Tiala said. "She doesn't trust our autotechs. You're a fresh variable. A wild card." "Great," Brad muttered, but he opened his toolkit anyway. As they entered the chamber, Neera turned toward him. Her eyes were startling a brilliant cyan, ringed in faint gold. They studied him carefully, assessing him not just as a technician, but as a man. "You're the human," she said. Her voice was smooth, but carried the weight of command. "Brad Davis." "Yes, ma'am," Brad replied, trying to keep his gaze level. He forced himself not to let his eyes drop. He was here to work. Just work. "You're different," she said. Brad blinked. "I haven't even touched anything yet. That's not what I mean." She held his gaze a moment longer, then gestured to the console beside her. Suction sync is off by 0.2 seconds. It causes discomfort. Do you know how to recalibrate? I do. Then do it. Brad knelt beside the main console and ran a diagnostic sweep, fingers moving over the interface. As he did, he couldn't help but hear the slow, soft hiss pulse of the machine working. It was rhythmic, intimate. He swallowed hard, focusing on the data. Neera didn't speak again, but she watched him, his hands, the way he moved. There was a moment, a flicker of silence, where Brad felt the room shift. Not physically, energetically. I've adjusted the sync pattern, he said at last, standing up. You should feel the pressure aligning with your internal cycle now. More gradual. Less. He paused, searching for the right word. Invading? She offered. He gave her a sheepish nod. Yeah. Neera leaned back in the chair and closed. Her eyes. The machine hummed differently, now slower, smoother. Her shoulders relaxed. Better, she murmured. Brad exhaled. Glad I could help. But before he turned to leave, Neera opened her eyes. Brad. He turned back, surprised. Most men, especially humans, can't keep their eyes on mine in this room. You did. He shrugged. You're the client. A faint smile touched her lips. No, I'm the test. You passed, for now. As Brad exited the chamber, heart pounding, he caught a glance from Tiala, arms folded, smiling. Still think you're just here to turn wrenches? Brad didn't answer, but deep inside, something had already shifted. This wasn't a simple job. This was the start of something far more complicated, and possibly far more dangerous. Brad adjusted the pressure valve on the prototype suction unit for the third time in under an hour. His hands were steady as breath, not so much. The room was warm, and not just from the heat coming off the recalibration drives. Neera stood beside him, arms crossed beneath her generous chest, watching his every move with a quiet intensity that made him sweat more than the equipment ever could. They'd been working together for 5 days now, testing and retesting the refurbished extraction units. She was a perfectionist, not demanding, precise, disciplined. She took her work seriously, and Brad was starting to understand why. The gala of yield is in less than 2 weeks, she said as he connected the thermal modulator. And I'm expected to outperform my last recorded numbers by at least 7%. No excuses. Brad glanced up at her. You don't strike me as someone who makes excuses. I don't, she replied coolly. Then, after a pause, that's why I asked for you. The room was quiet for a long moment, except for the hum of the suction array powering down after a test cycle. Brad reached over, twisted the final calibration dial, and turned to her. Try now. Neera stepped into the chamber's central chair, her movements fluid, practiced. The chrome-finished arms of the extractor unfolded from the walls like petals of a mechanical flower. She eased back into the seat and gave him a nod. Brad stepped behind the console, fingers moving across the interface. The cups extended, attaching gently to Neera's chest with a soft hiss. The sensors pulsed green synchronization within optimal range. Then, the soft rhythm of suction began, gentle, steady, flawless. Neera let out a breath. Not a moan, not exaggerated, just relief. That's the first time it hasn't felt like the machine was trying to prove something, she said after a few seconds. Brad gave a half smile. Sometimes less is more. She tilted her head, eyes half-lidded as she looked at him. Is that how you are, Brad Davis? Subtle strength? I'm more of a wrench-and-go kind of guy. She hummed. I'm starting to think otherwise. He tried to ignore the way her voice wrapped around his name like silk. He'd kept things professional so far, but the station was full of flirtation, and Neera was something else entirely. Her intensity had nothing to do with seduction. It was in her discipline, her focus. She radiated control until you caught her smiling. Then it was like watching a sun peek through storm clouds. He disconnected the extractor once. The session ended. Neera stood and wrapped herself in a loose robe, then approached him with quiet steps. "You've done more for me in a week than our chief engineers did in a year," she said, softer now. "I was beginning to think it was me that was broken." Brad looked at her, surprised. "You're not broken. You're just pushing limits the system wasn't built for." She searched his face, like she was trying to read something he hadn't said. "Have you ever considered staying? Beyond your contract?" He blinked. "I wasn't planning on it. I mean, I don't even know how long I'm supposed to be. Here, you're not like the others. You treat this job like it matters. Like we matter." Brad shifted on his feet, unsure how to respond. "That's how I was trained." "No," Neera said, stepping a little closer. "That's who you are." The silence stretched, charged and vulnerable. He could feel the pull, the unspoken invitation, but he stepped back, placing the scanner on the tray with more force than necessary. "I'm here to fix machines," he said. "Not," his voice trailed off, "not to get involved." He nodded. Neera's expression shuddered. She looked away, then walked to the far end of the room. "There's a shipment going out tomorrow. Tiala will want you there for final calibration. You should rest tonight." Brad swallowed, feeling something twist in his chest. He hated disappointing people, but more than that, he hated the fact that part of him wanted to cross the line he'd drawn. He wasn't just a technician anymore, not to them, not to her. As he left the chamber, he glanced back through the observation glass. Neera stood alone, back straight, head high, but her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled her robe tighter around herself. He told himself it was better this way. He told himself he was here for work, not connection. But deep down, Brad Davis already knew. His line was starting to blur. The smell hit Brad first sharp, metallic, and distinctly wrong. He froze in the doorway of Harvest Chamber Delta, staring at the puddle of pale, pink-tinged liquid pooling beneath the reservoir valve. Sorbent milk was famously rich, dense, and creamy. It should never have been this thin or this tainted. The alarm hadn't triggered. That, more than anything, told him someone had bypassed the safety protocols. He dropped to one knee and began scanning the valve with his portable analyzer, jaw tight, breath shallow. This was the third minor failure in less than a week, and the second one that felt deliberate. Behind him, the door hissed open. Tiala stepped in, her usually calm demeanor replaced by something sharper. "You saw it too?" she asked. Brad didn't look up. Contamination. Regulator override was forced through a diagnostic loop. Someone disabled the filter checks. Tiala swore softly in Sorbent, her voice losing its usual velvet. "This chamber services our diplomatic shipments." That milk was going to the Androsian high table. Brad stood, lips pressed in a line. If they received that batch and found it spoiled, they'd cancel every trade deal we have with them, Tiala finished grimly, and take us off the core trust register. That would bankrupt the station. Brad looked around the chamber. Again, slower this time. Nothing had been smashed or shorted. This wasn't clumsy. This was surgical. "It's sabotage," he said. Tiala nodded once. "And it's internal." A silence passed between them, heavy with implication. Someone on Lactera Station wanted the Sorbent economy to collapse or at least lose their grip on the galactic milk trade. And with tensions rising across species markets, it wouldn't take much. They walked briskly to the main systems core, a command hub nestled deep inside the station's central ring. Brad worked in silence, scanning for inconsistencies in the maintenance logs. Tiala leaned over his shoulder, eyes flicking across the data as quickly as his own. And then they saw it An unauthorized login 3 cycles ago from a technician's terminal in the subdeck. The user tag was masked, but the access pattern was sloppy, not Sorban, human. Brad's stomach tightened. "I need to go down there," he said. Tiala placed a hand on his arm. "Not alone. I can handle myself." She narrowed her eyes. "Brad, you've been here less than 2 weeks. You don't know what's at stake." "I know someone's trying to take this place down from the inside," he shot back. "And if that shipment had gotten off station, it would have worked." They stared at each other for a moment longer, two professionals, both stubborn, both proud. Finally, Tiala nodded. "Then I'm going with you." The subdeck was colder than the rest of the station, dimly lit and lined with old maintenance. Conduits that hadn't been used in years. The air felt thicker here, and the quiet buzz of machinery was replaced by deep, echoing creaks that spoke of strain and neglect. Brad led the way, flashlights sweeping across access hatches and sealed data. "Lines." His toolkit thumped softly against his hip. "Why target the milk?" he asked, half to himself. Tiala's voice echoed behind him. "Because it's the lifeblood of our people. Take away our ability to trade, and you take away our place in the Ya." Galaxy. A sudden noise metal scraping on metal. Brad held up a hand, stopping her. They turned the corner slowly and found the access hatch to a secondary extraction control module hanging open. Inside, a human man crouched over the console, working fast too fast. "Step away from the terminal," Brad said, voice calm but firm. The man spun around, eyes wide. Brad recognized him. Anders Cowan. A fellow human technician Brad had seen in the orientation logs, but never in person. "Davis," Anders spat. "You don't understand what you're part of." Brad stepped forward, jaw clenched. "Then, explain it." Anders shook his head. "This station, it shouldn't exist. Do you know what they're doing with the milk? Biotech manipulation, genetic rewriting, hormonal influence on political leaders. You think this is just nutrition? You think this is just milk?" Tiala stiffened beside Brad. "It's weaponized biology," Anders hissed. "The Sorban are rewriting the balance of power across the galactic markets. An Earth's trade guild won't stand by and watch it happen." "You're working for the guild?" Brad asked, stunned. "Everyone has a side, Davis. You just don't realize you're already on one." Brad's hands curled into fists. He glanced at Tiala. Her jaw was set, but her eyes had gone distant, calculating. "What do you want to do?" he asked her quietly. Tiala turned to him, and for the first time, her voice held steel. "We take him in, alive, but the guild just declared war, Brad. And now, so do we." As Anders was escorted into a holding cell and security lockdown swept. Across the station, Brad felt the gravity of what had just unfolded. This wasn't just about machines anymore. This was about trust, about species, about politics wrapped in intimacy. And as he returned to his quarters that night, exhausted and unsure of what came next, he found a message waiting on his terminal from Naira. "We need to talk. Everything's changing. Meet me midnight. My chamber." Brad stared at the screen for a long time, heart heavy. Something had shifted, and whatever came next. He wasn't sure he could keep pretending this job didn't matter. Not anymore. Brad stood outside Naira's chamber, his hand hovering over the control pad. The station's night cycle bathed the corridor in muted indigo light, and everything felt quieter, like the station was holding its breath. His pulse tapped against, his ribs like a warning drum. Part of him still wanted to turn away, pretend none of this mattered, that he could just fix machines and leave the politics and emotions behind. But Naira wasn't a malfunctioning valve. And this wasn't just about maintenance anymore. He keyed the panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a chamber draped in low, golden light. The air was warm, scented with citrus and something sweeter. Inside, Nera stood barefoot. On the polished floor, wrapped in a flowing silk robe the color of deep wine. Her red hair was loose, tumbling over her shoulders like flame. "You came," she said quietly, not smiling, just watching him. Brad stepped inside, letting the door close behind him. "You said we needed to talk. I didn't lie." For a moment, neither of them moved. The atmosphere was heavy not with tension, but with the weight of everything unspoken. Finally, Nera turned and walked to the curved seating bench near her observation window. The stars spilled in from beyond the glass, casting her in a silver outline. "I heard about the sabotage," she said. "Tiala briefed me." Brad crossed his arms. "It was a human. Working for Earth's Trade Guild." Nera nodded slowly. "Of course. They've feared us for years. Feared what it means if sorbent milk truly becomes the galaxy's primary biological commodity. Feared what it would mean if we didn't need Earth anymore." Brad sank into the seat beside her, elbows on his knees. "And is it true? What he said, that your people are manipulating genetics? Using milk to influence politics?" She turned her face toward him. "Our milk is powerful. That's not a secret. It has properties Earth science hasn't fully decoded: immune-boosting agents, hormonal regulators, even neural mood stabilizers. But it's not a weapon. Not unless you think healing is warfare." He looked at her carefully. "You've never. Lead to me. Don't start now." Nera inhaled slowly, her eyes softening. "I haven't lied. But there are things we don't advertise. Our milk does more than nourish. It bonds. Not chemically. Emotionally. Energetically. When a being receives it from a sorbent donor over time, they feel a connection, a closeness, a kind of biological trust." Brad blinked. "So ... like a neural imprint?" She nodded. "Something like that. It's why our highest yielders, those with the most refined profiles, are assigned to diplomats and leaders. Not to control them, Brad, to calm them. To bridge the cultural chasms between species that words alone cannot." "And me?" He asked, his voice lower now. "Have I been ... exposed to it?" Nera reached for his hand. Her fingers were cool, deliberate, soft. "You've touched the machines, the containers. You've inhaled trace pheromones in the air. And yes, you've touched me." He didn't pull away. "I need you to know," she said, her voice trembling now. "What I feel for you is not chemical. It's not programming. It's real. I've been resisting it since the moment you walked onto the station. And I know. You felt it too." Brad's throat went dry. "I have." She moved closer, just enough for their shoulders to touch. "Then you understand what's at stake. The Guild wants to control trade. Yes, but more than that. They fear what love between species might look like. If we bond, we erase the borders they cling to." He swallowed hard. "Tiala asked me to testify before the Intergalactic Tribunal. They want a human to stand on record, to speak about what happened, about you, about this station." Nera went. "Still, if I tell the truth," Brad continued, "Earth will disown me. I'll be blacklisted. I might never see home again." She looked at him, eyes shimmering now. "And if you lie? Then I walk away clean, and this place falls." The silence between them was longer this time. The hum of the station systems echoed faintly in the walls, a mechanical heartbeat matching his own. Nera leaned in, pressing her forehead lightly to his. "I won't ask you to choose me," she whispered, "but I will ask you to choose what's right." Brad exhaled shakily, his fingers tightening around hers. "You already know what I'm going to do." "I hoped," she said, a tear slipping down her cheek. He kissed it away. Then he stood, his silhouette framed by the stars beyond. The glass Then let's go make it official. As they walked out together into the corridor, hand in hand, the artificial morning lights of Lactera Station began to rise. Brad Davis had just declared war on Earth's silence, and for the first time in a long time, he felt absolutely irrevocably human. The grand hall of concordance loomed like a cathedral suspended in the void, orbiting neutral space between the Tri-System Alliance. It was a place where civilizations came to present truth, or to bury it under diplomacy and fear. Brad Davis adjusted the collar of his formal jumpsuit as he stood behind the podium, the glass floor below reflecting constellations. Seated in a crescent before him were representatives of 12 major species: Terran, Sorban, Velari, Urshan, and others whose very forms defied gravity or light. The gallery above buzzed with tension. Reporters, observers, traders, spies, all here for one thing: to see whether a human would betray his own planet. Naira stood beside him in ceremonial robes of flowing crimson and silver, her presence a calm center in a room charged with political lightning. Her expression was unreadable, but Brad could feel the hum of emotion beneath it. She hadn't asked him to speak, hadn't pushed, but he knew this was more than testimony. It was transformation. A chime echoed through the chamber. The tribunal began. The Terran delegate leaned forward, first stern, sharp-suited, the polished face of Earth's trade guild. Technician Davis, he said coolly, you were brought to Lactera Station for mechanical support, and yet you now claim to speak on matters of interspecies commerce, diplomacy, and biological bonding? Brad stepped forward, his voice steady. I didn't claim that. You asked me here because someone tried to sabotage Lactera Station. A human from your ranks. A murmur passed through the chamber. The delegate pressed his lips together. And your evidence? Brad activated the holopad. Images flickered to life, a sequence of logs, tampered systems, and security footage, revealing Andrews Callan overriding protocols. Andrews believed Sorban milk was being used to manipulate galactic leaders. Brad continued. He believed peace was a weapon, but what I found was trust, cooperation, healing. That terrified him. And apparently, it terrifies you. The delegate frowned. Are you suggesting Sorban biology should be allowed to influence interstellar policy? Brad turned slightly, facing the room. I'm suggesting it already does. Every station, every outpost that uses their milk for healing, for adaptation, for harmony between mixed crews, that's not manipulation. That's progress. Another chime sounded. A Zephon representative spoke now, her crystalline body shimmering with refracted light. There are rumors, she said, her voice a blend of music and vibration, of a deeper truth. One buried in Sorban genetics. Speak it. Brad looked to Naira. She gave a small nod. He activated the second file. A rotating hologram appeared. Sorban genetic sequencing overlaid with human DNA. Strikingly similar. Shockingly compatible. When I began diagnostics on the extraction machines, I noticed irregular patterns in the milk's hormonal bonds, Brad said. I ran deeper scans. What I found was a dormant protein chain designed to activate only in the presence of specific neural markers. Human markers. Silence. Absolute silence. Lactera's milk isn't just nutritious. It's reactive. Responsive. Someone long before us engineered it to sync with us, to connect our species. Naira stepped forward. We were meant to find. You, the chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over one another accusations, awe, disbelief. Earth's representatives stood, red-faced and shaking. This is conspiracy. He spat, a fairy tale based on an anomaly. It's truth, Brad said simply. You just can't control it. The Empress of Sorban rose slowly from her seat among the observing parties. Tall, radiant, and regal beyond words, her voice cut through the noise like light through storm clouds. The bond between our peoples was forged long ago, she said, but only now does it awaken. Not through war, not through politics, through choice. She extended a hand toward Brad and Naira. Let this be the beginning of something new. The tribunal went quiet. Then, one by one, the votes were cast. Sorbent milk was not banned. Lactaris. Station was elevated to interstellar trust status. Trade would continue. Oversight would expand. The first formal interspecies bond with a human technician and a Sorbent prime yielder was to be recognized and celebrated. Later, in the quiet after the storm, Brad and Naira stood together on the balcony of their new quarters on the stations. Upper ring. Below them, stars spun lazily, and the twin suns of Bastus glowed like eyes watching their ascent. You did it, Naira whispered. No, Brad said, lacing his fingers with hers. We did it. She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. You could have walked away, gone back to Earth, left it all behind. He smiled. Home isn't a planet. It's where the truth lives. She turned toward him, her breath warm on his cheek. Then stay with me. I already have. And as they kissed beneath the starlight, the galaxy felt, if only for a moment, a little more united, a little more human, a little more whole.